Hello, this video is for Eric. I have been thinking about what's been going on your channel, and it is making me very sad, and it is the typical thing that is happening. You're both very precious living beings, and you're giving the world a lot. The message is love and peace for all living beings equally. And then there's always trolls coming into the picture. It never fails. It's always happening, you know. And don't get discouraged. You have now thousands, tens of thousands of supporters, of good people, you know. Don't count these 2,000 trolls. Don't count them as having any validity whatsoever. You want to say something to him too? No. My husband's shy, because we should all be making videos in our pajamas to each other, because it's not about the facade. It's about what we have to say to each other. You know, that's what matters. I see a bunch of facade videos on the internet, and like totally zero content of anything. It's just empty calories. That's when it's empty calories is rather on the good side. What's even worse than the empty calories is when we're dealing with anti-information. And like this group that you're talking about, that is ganging up on people. There's an organization out there called Center for Consumer Freedom. Behind it is Richard Berman, a market psychologist, and I wouldn't be surprised if Richard Berman was also part of this sabotage organization. Well, what an amazing thing, a non-profit organization to sabotage people. Yes, baby. And that guy even admitted to it. He doesn't even feel ashamed to admit that because he was snubbed by you, now he has to recruit people and sabotage against you. I studied psychology myself, not to become a market psychologist, but to become a clinical psychologist and a therapist, and to understand what is going on inside of people's minds, you know, what is happening. So it has been puzzling me for so many years, all these things happening in the world with people who sabotage others, or people who are psychopath or sociopath. Those things have puzzled me because I have such an inability to understand where these people are coming from, and that's why I'm trying to find out. It's like, you know, for some people, for example, Elliot Rodger, it is not that puzzling to me, because obviously he was driven into a corner like a deer, like a wounded deer. A wounded deer driven in the corner will kick out, you know. And the deer will only see red, like only see rage, and it's a biological symptom. It's like hormones and cortisol and all of this taking over and putting the individual into a rage where it short circuits the neocortex, and where they cannot be planning or thinking in that moment. But a sociopath or a psychopath, they usually have low resting heart rates. They usually are calm. They usually don't feel that much pain, neither psychologically nor physically. And they probably have a very high pain threshold where you can actually hammer them in the hand and they go like, whatever, you know, that's lame. And if they see suffering, they feel nothing, you know. And so I see it as a brain pathology, and I'm not trying to put them down. I'm not trying to create another hate group against those people. That's not going to bring us any further anyway. I'm not for holding the other cheek. I'm not for eye for an eye. I am for neither one, because neither one has helped humanity any further. The only way humanity can make any progress is if they begin to understand themselves and others. If we dive deeper into the questions of why somebody does something. And so that's what I'm trying to do. That's what I've been trying to do almost my whole life. And that's why I wrote this book, because I'm trying to just understand it for myself. I'm trying to capture it in thoughts on the page, and thoughts that I can always go back to and revise and think about again and again, and compare with certain experiences I've made or data I've collected, and little by little find the answers to all these questions. Why are people doing it? What is really going on? What's really going on inside of an individual who wants to hurt someone else, animal or person? So what's happening? What's going on? How can we determine what's going on within those people? Because only if we understand them can we even create a dialogue among each other. You know, it's like just condemning a group of people. For example, there's this guy, he had somebody make a documentary film about him because he's a psychopath. He's been imprisoned for many years. A guy from Israel, lives in London, I think, and he is married now, and his wife does not want to have a child by him because she's afraid that the child will have his genes, but she cares about him, and he does care about her to a certain degree. He said only to a certain degree, as good as it gets close to what he defines as love, and he's very honest and very open about this. This is so he has a little bit more going on in his brain than the average psychopath. He is willing to go within himself and study and find out what it is, what makes him think the way he does, or act or react the way he does. I'm trying to, with my videos and with my book and with my conversations that I have with people on the internet, I'm trying to come towards them. I'm not excluding, I'm not putting them in drawers and letting them just sit there and collect dust. That's not what I do. That's what most people do. Most people seem to have no problems categorizing people into you bad and you good, and then end of story. You know, I don't want to do this. This is not where I want to go with my life, and I also see that this is not going to create world peace. The only way we can create world peace if we start to understand every single person, the psychology behind certain things, and not be happy with some simplistic judgments, you know, and go deeper, you know, really understand why this is happening. Dr. Adrian Rain is doing this. He's doing brain scans on violent criminals in prisons and on thousands and thousands of prisoners in the United States, and he sees that there are certain formations in the brains that are underdeveloped or even dwarfed in comparison to normal, you know, the control group of normal average type of people. And I don't know if he already studied those people, like the animal rights activists who have real extreme caring and sensitivity and compassion. I don't know if he has compared those. That would be the next step to make, and I would ask Dr. Rain to take this into consideration and scan people like Paul Watson and Ingrid Newkirk and Peter Hammarstedt. I would like to see Dr. Rain study those people and do brain scans on those people who have real extreme compassion, like way above average, and see what's going on. See if maybe those brain formations that are representative for compassion, caring, sensitivity is extra large in those people's brains. So that's what I hypothesize, that those formations, for example, like the amygdala or maybe the corpus callosum, or the particular bridge that is between the two sides of the corpus callosum, if that is somehow stronger or better functioning. They found out that in severe criminals it is kind of inflated, but in a way of inflamed, like if it's going into overdrive and has to do overcompensation, and in the course of that it becomes overwhelmed. The function of the corpus callosum is to balance out the chemistry within the central nervous system. So if, for example, if somebody is overwhelmed with too much pain, let's say physical pain, then the corpus callosum will try to balance that out by initiating the release of endorphins, like serotonin, for example, and other type of endorphins, in order to balance this pain out and create like a painkiller effect in the system. So I think that's very interesting that this function is kind of like inflamed and overreactive and kind of exhausted in very violent criminals. What does that tell us? You know, it's those kind of questions that we have to dive deeper into it. You know, why is that kind of like spongy and inflated in those people? And they found out that the people with Williams syndrome have extra large amygdala. So maybe the amygdala definitely is part of the function of caring, compassion, and understanding how another living being feels, and love, basically. You know, love is the mother instinct. And so if we can come closer to understanding ourselves, if we can start to understand the brain better and the mechanisms, the psychological mechanisms. And I believe that if I want to do like a golden rule of thumb in terms of psychology, I will say that it probably almost always, or maybe always, at least to a certain extent, goes back to the problem of unempowerment. When people feel unempowered, when they don't have any compassion, they will see other people only as opponents or as means to get from A to B. And when they are being hurt, when their ego is being hurt, when they feel usually entitled, and when they are snubbed by someone, sometimes just incidentally snubbed, not even deliberately snubbed, they will take offense to an extreme. They feel like they're some kind of monarch and they need to be respected, kind of like Napoleon. So it's like an overcompensation process that is going on psychologically with those people. And so they take terrible offense, and then the ego gets really, really hurt, and the ego latches on to, you know, these overinflations, like these attempts to compensate against feeling low. Like, for example, a guy goes up to a girl and wants something from her. She rejects him, and then he says, I didn't want you anyway. You're so ugly. So that's what it's kind of like, in a simplistic way, you know, like that's the reaction of the ego that says I am really strong, when in reality he feels really rejected and he feels really low of himself and has a real low self-esteem. That's what I mean by unempowerment. So when we are really empowered within ourselves, when we understand ourselves better and other people better and mechanisms better and causalities better, then we can empower ourselves. We don't need to feel low of ourselves. I often feel very alone, and I've been bullied many times. I'm still bullied on the internet. So what I do is I do positive affirmations. But that's not an overinflation. That's not a compensation type of thing. That's just trying to balance myself out. So when I write down on a piece of paper that I am worthy, or I make a video, which I did earlier, to say that I am worthy of love. You know, everybody should say that to themselves. Everyone should say, I'm worthy of love. I'm not to say I am better than others. That doesn't help us. That's an overcompensation. That's the ego trying to dwarf the emotion. We need to be honest to our emotions, because when people do overcompensations, they are skipping over what's actually going on. So we have to first come back to the root of what's going on, which can be, you know, anything like I am afraid, or I'm jealous. I'm really jealous, and I this is terrible, that feeling, but I want to admit to it. Or I am real angry right now. I can't even talk to this or that person. If I try to act like I'm not angry, it would just come out. Like, we have to come true with ourselves in that moment of the actual emotion. And then we work from there. So first we have to come back to point zero, which is the emotion itself. Then we have to work with that emotion. We have to not run away from it. We have to not pretend or act or put up some kind of show, you know, and cover it up with a mask or something, because that doesn't get us anywhere. Other people will often see people's real feelings before they see it themselves, you know, because when somebody has an objective view of the situation. But that's why it is important, that it's what Jiddu Krishnamurti said, we have to become our own observers. That's why primotherapy has brought me so far, to understand all of this, to understand all these mechanisms of it, you know. But then again, primotherapy by itself is very lopsided. We have to put up our self-esteem in a natural way. That's why I say empowerment is the basics of all. Without doing empowerment work, cognitive empowerment work, we cannot even do approaches like primotherapy. So, and that's why I would never apply primotherapy the way it has been applied. There's too many people have become very damaged, and 2 people died from it. So that's why I will not recommend it to people. But we have to create a therapy process that includes all these aspects, that includes allowing the state of emotion to be in, that is there, not forcing someone into it, and not making someone dwell into it as in primotherapy. But what we need to do primarily is we have to empower people and make them believe in themselves in a natural way, without masks, without overinflation, without overcompensation, like Napoleon did. So we need to, and that's where Buddhism comes in as a philosophy, not as the religion. Okay, not the shaved heads and not the rituals and not this flagellation stuff and all of this. No, the philosophy. Okay, the philosophy of Buddhism is not religious. The Buddha was actually, he didn't want religion. He didn't even want people to worship him. He said he's not a god, he is a teacher. He is a messenger, basically. And he's explored things on himself, and he's come to the conclusion that we need to be good to ourselves. We can't be ascetists and starve ourselves to death. We have to be good to ourselves, we have to love ourselves, and we have to love every living being that is surrounding us. Okay, we have to be good to life, pro-life in the real sense, not in the religious sense, not speciesist pro-life, pan-life, pan-love. That's what I would call it. We have to be pan-lovers. We need to love all life around us and recognize that all life is precious. We're all equally precious. Horses, dogs, and humans, and all the other beings. We're equally precious. Worms too. It's what Paul Watson said. If we don't have worms, everything would fall apart. All life on planet Earth would fall apart if all worms were damaged and wouldn't function. We need the worms. They are our scavengers. They are our recycle system. Without them, nothing would work. Nothing. So I'm not talking about internal parasites. I'm talking about earthworms and bugs and maggots and flies. Yes, they are pesky, but they have saved people's lives. For example, they put fly eggs on people's wounds when they had flesh-eating bacteria, and they saved so many people when they do this holistic approach in some hospitals. And people, I guess it's controversial, and because people have this, it's just out of a psychological reason, because people, they have an aversion to flies and maggots. But it's exactly the opposite when they're, of course, when they're coming from a sterile environment, when they are bred for that purpose, and they're completely sterile, then those eggs and the maggots are sterile, and they only eat the dead material. They don't eat live material. And they excrete a formula that will kill all flesh-eating bacteria. And so they rescued this guy. He would have died. He had this one guy, he only had the flesh-eating bacteria in a wound in his leg, and they would have amputated the leg if they hadn't put the eggs into it. And so the maggots, they ate all the stuff, they killed all the flesh-eating bacteria, and the leg was saved. And his life was saved. And there was this girl who had that same illness, and they didn't do it, and she had like one limb after another removed. And I don't know what happened to her. I tried to petition to the hospitals to use the fly method, but they never responded. So I don't know. That's only so much I can do. I can offer people holistic methods. I can say, this worked on this person, check it out. And if they don't do it, then there's nothing I can do. I would like to help everyone if I could, but I can't. I can only petition, and that's what I'm doing. I petition. Basically, my videos are petitions to people to go within themselves and to become compassionate. Because only if we become compassionate with one another, if people stop doing hate and sabotage and trolling and sadistic acts and selfish acts, and Richard Berman, for example, doing anything for money. If we stop doing this, if we start to look at other individuals and start to have compassion and start to feed that, start to practice that, we can do it. We can make those formations in the brain grow. That is my appeal to the world. And So my last word again, back to the situation with Eric. Eric, don't worry about these people. Don't worry about them for a second. You know, if you need to talk to someone, I'm here all the time. Or Paul as well. We both care about you. You have thousands of people who care about Jax and you. And believe in those, believe in yourself, you know, believe in love. And don't let the haters make you frustrated or depressed. Ever. Take care. Bye.